so healing. Medicine alleviate the sickness, liquid to fix them, it comes with the cost. Wake up, cold sweat, scratching, itching, trying to escape the skin that barely fit him. Gone, get another bottle just to get a couple swallows, headed towards the bottom, couldn't get off it. Didn't even think he had a problem, though we couldn't sleep without getting nauseous. Room spinning.
Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hey everyone, happy December. You are listening to Dr. Judy, WTF, right here in the heart of Hollywood at the Universal Broadcasting Network at the Sensegower Studios. I am your host, as always, Walt Lusk, and Dr. Judy Rosenberg is here in studio. She slid in her chair just at the last moment, given her illustrious and very busy holiday schedule. Welcome. And we have a very, timely show today. We're going to be dealing with a kind of a downer topic. A little bit of depression and suicide, which a lot of folks feel is a big issue these days. And then, of course, we will shrink that tune. We've got a Jermaine tune. It's a very popular rock and roll song that will definitely not be a Christmas song, I assure you.
Not a Christmas song.
No. So we are a call-in show, by the way. If you care to call in, feel free. If you're feeling down and just want some company, you're by yourself, get on the couch with Dr. Judy. Our number is 323-284-7826. That's 323-284-7826. So feel free to call in and get on the couch with Dr. Judy. Remember, we say is don't explode or implode, unload. Yes. So.
And we do look forward to your call-ins, and please do call in. We both thought that today the topic of suicide would be the right timing, because during the Christmas and holiday seasons, people get very despondent, they feel really isolated, and they start reevaluating their life before the beginning of the year. And so thank you, Walt. I really appreciate that. So now I'm seen and heard, huh? Okay, so I thought this topic is going to be really appropriate for this week. And again, please do call in, because I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about what's going on in your world.
That's
and
right.
How we can help.
That's absolutely right. Whether it's stress from the holidays, from the economy, from family, doesn't matter.
Yes.
That's really the underlying thing from suicide is really depression. And as I like to say, suicide is really a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And if you say that enough to yourself, you realize that it truly is a permanent solution to a very temporary problem.
And if some of you have already seen previous episodes, you might know that I created a mind map for healing human disconnect. And when you think about the topic of suicide, what is suicide? Isn't suicide the most blatant expression of hopelessness? And isn't suicide, in essence, a way to completely, it is, not in essence, it's a way to completely disconnect from
from
yourself,
everything, from yourself,
life.
from your family,
Yes.
from society.
Yes. So in my work as a psychologist, I created a mind map called Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect.
And if you want to see that, you go to www.drjudywtf.com. It is a 9-panel mind map that Judy developed over a dozen years ago.
Yeah, I think that people need a map to know where they are in the process of life. And this map is a from through to model, the creation of the problem, the dismantling of the problem, and the paradigm shift into solution. And I want to talk to you about the creation of the problem of suicide. It's a problem. It's
It is actually since
unfortunately, a big
2010.
problem.
It is the number one killer. I'm sorry. Since 2010, it's the 10th killer of folks in the country, and it even outranks car accidents. And my point is, who knows, a car accident or two might not even be a real car accident. It might be an attempt or successful one at suicide.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how many so-called accidents are really suicides, do we? It's
no,
not
we do
like
not.
we get to interview the person who decides to
No, unfortunately.
to change lanes at the last second, or person who last minute decides to take a little bit more of their medication and doesn't really have a suicide note along with this particular incident.
True. And
So it's
and
not
there-
associated with that necessarily.
there's
Oh, he
fewer
took too much of his
autopsies.
medication.
Yeah, there's fewer autopsies as well, and so
Yes.
they don't really do investigation as to the cause of death anymore.
And I think what's really underestimated is the slow death route. I mean, aren't we all on some level killing ourselves just a little bit every day? Aren't we all taking a little bit too many toxins into our body? Aren't we all having thoughts ravaging our minds that are creating psychosomatic problems within our mind bodies, thoughts of how we're not good enough, or how we're not loved enough, or how we're not enough in some way? And aren't these thoughts and foods and behaviors in some sense killing us off slowly?
But I heard that if you eat foods with the preservatives in it, that might prolong your life.
No, that'll just make you look better as a corpse.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, right.
So it's,
Forget the formaldehyde.
isn't that the joke? You live fast, die hard. Live hard, die fast, and have a good-looking corpse. Is
Yeah,
it
a
something like that?
good-looking corpse,
And a good-looking
exactly.
corpse.
Well, you know, some people can have a good-looking corpse. One of my fantasies was to have, this is a sick veer off of the subject, but I'll veer off
Go
just
for it.
because my mind veers off, and I might as well veer off in public.
We're all ADD in one form or another.
Some sort of. So I have this fantasy that that there would be this whole line of business where people could have facelifts after they passed on, and of course these would be painless, right? Because people could just staple it in, right? They could have breast implants, and all of this is very painless surgery, and they could be great looking. So just a little comic relief, okay? But getting back on the subject, it is
Well, that's funny. I had
very
a good friend of mine.
suicide-
He wants to be shot in the back by a jealous husband. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
I don't know if that's suicide or not, but that's where he wants to go.
I'm sure he can orchestrate that, right? I'm sure he can activate the jealous button anytime he wishes and make that happen for himself.
Maybe.
So suicide, again, it's a very, very serious topic. And I was talking to Walt before the show, and this was a discovery that most people who commit suicide are the elderly, aren't they?
Actually, number one is men over the age of 85 is the numero uno group on a percentage basis. I mean, that us guys, we just don't have the network that women do. And it's even been known kind of that if our wives go before we do, that usually within a couple of years, we're right behind them. Just because we don't have the social network of girlfriends, if you will, to hang out with. And at 85, the kids are, grown doing their thing. Maybe your wife's passed, and you're pretty much by your lonesome. And how much football and soap operas can you watch on television?
So social isolationism.
Well, there's an ism. Yes,
There's
social
an ism.
isolationism. Yes.
When we're isolated, when we're cut off from our community, when the people that we love have died, and we're on our own, it's really, really hard for us to feel interconnected. It's really hard for us to feel important. It's hard for us to feel needed. And once we don't feel needed on the planet, then with no purpose in mind, we feel that that we don't have a place.
There's no hope.
place for us.
Yeah, there's no hope.
Right. So, I used to work in an old age home. I used to be the psychologist who'd go in there and administer treatment to the elderly. And what I saw was pretty shocking, because The first thing that I learned is that substance abuse is huge in the elderly community. Did you know that?
Well, that's because the doctors are prescribing so much medication, right?
Exactly. And because they are so isolated, and many elderly people are not visited by their families, and they sit there alone, and their social network is the caretakers or the other people at the facility who are equally as depressed and equally as isolated. And so instead of interconnecting, oftentimes they do stay very alone and isolated in their own room, and they don't really reach out to each other. It's not like they're having these fun games of, I don't know, bridge or whatever happening at the old
folks home, huh?
Old folks home.
Although I
I'm
must
not
say,
saying
my grandmother, who died at age 98, went to an old folks home here in Los Angeles, and she came from a very small town, and she said she never wore lipstick in her entire life. She'd go to breakfast, she'd put lipstick on. She'd go to lunch, she'd put lipstick on. She'd go shopping with her girlfriends, she'd put lipstick on. She said, I never went through more lipstick in my entire life.
Wow. You mean as when she was older?
Yes, she was busy doing stuff at the facility she was at.
Well, maybe I was working at the wrong facility.
I don't know,
I've
but
seen
that
other
was just her
facilities
perspective.
where there are a lot of people who are interconnected, and those people are less likely to commit suicide. People who have friends, people who share with each other, people who communicate with each other are just not as likely to have that feeling of isolation. And what I did find is that the elderly are more prone to misusing even their prescription drugs, and oftentimes they will turn to alcohol.
Well, alcohol
medicate
is
further.
an amazingly challenging drug. I mean, it's worse than a lot of other things to start with, I think.
And then when you mix it with the prescription medication, that's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
The elderly, surprisingly enough. Did you say that people over 85 are most likely?
That's the highest percentage. Men over age 85
are okay.
Highest percentage.
And people, please do call in, because I'm sure that many of you who are listening have personal concerns. If you're out there and you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling lonely, if you're worried about the holidays, if you don't know who you're going to be spending the holidays with, please do call in and let's talk about it. Let's get a plan going so that you're connected to your community, because this is a very, very difficult time of the year.
It really is a difficult time. Even though statistically the worst time of the year for overall in the calendar year for suicide is not really Christmas time. It's actually the lowest, because we really do have more family around us. It's actually in July is a higher percentage, which I thought was interesting. One article I read was complaining about the misconception was put on by the media. But the reality is that July is the worst month. But the problem is, a lot of us, there's an article here, we think that other people are happier than we are, and we assume that their lives are better off. Our ignorance has serious consequences. Research shows that more of us underestimate our emotional pain, the emotional pain of others, and are more isolated and lonely than us. So, in other words, we are, once again, as I've elaborated before in previous shows, we are taking our situation and comparing our worst to their best, which is always a very, very, very unfair comparison, and every single time we're going to lose.
And especially during the holidays are very idealized, because the image is that we're one big happy family. We're all celebrating together. We've got the Christmas tree, and everybody's waiting for their presents, and everybody has these wonderful family members around them. Well, what about
members,
you out there
always.
who are in the process of getting a divorce, or you out there who've just lost a loved one, or you out there who are alienated from your brother or your sister or your mother, or just broke up with somebody, or are no longer talking to your best friend? You must not be feeling so wonderful around this time. And this is the time when the feeling of wonderful is just so important. And we count down to the new year, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Well, some people are not that happy when it comes down to that Happy New Year.
You might be optimistic that this next year is going to be better than this year, and you'd hope that this year was going to be better than last.
Right. And
again, expectation, which is talked about.
Right. So when do people commit suicide is when they are hopeless. Okay?
Yeah, and
Hopelessness.
you can call in if you're feeling hopeless or if you're not feeling hopeless. Our number, again, is 323-284-7826. And get on the couch with Dr. Judy.
We'd love to hear from you. And if you don't feel comfortable talking in public, you don't want to mention your actual name, just make one up and get on the couch anyways.
You know, in terms of holiday stress, there are some things that can be done to avoid holiday stress. And I've got some 5 things that some folks here think that are good to do or to experience to avoid holiday stress. And the first one is to practice the art of listening. Last I checked, we all have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we technically should listen twice as much as we don't. Let's talk. And sometimes we just want to be heard. You know, empathy is an incredibly powerful feeling.
Yes.
And, you know, we need to be empathetic with each other. And sometimes if we're empathetic with somebody else, we end up feeling better, right?
Yes, very much so. And as I talk about this many times over, the most powerful healing force on the planet is
Love. Unconditional love.
Unconditional
Yes,
love.
absolutely.
So if we want to receive unconditional love, we have to be unconditionally loving. And that doesn't
That's
mean
correct.
doormat. That does not mean doormat. There are a lot of people who we need to let go because they are not treating us with kindness and dignity and respect. And so we are doing them a favor by letting them go, because then they need to go back unto themselves and self-reflect upon that and come back and so to speak, see if they do want to interconnect, they need to reshuffle the deck and see if they can own their own stuff in order to reconnect. So some people think that letting people go from their lives is something that is not unconditionally loving. However, if it's done with the right consciousness, it's very unconditionally loving, because it's calling upon the other person to step up to your respect plate
Well,
and treat you with human dignity.
Agreed. And I had to learn a long time ago, you know, I'm a very loyal person, and I had to learn to be loyal to myself.
That's right.
And if you find there's some people in your life that's really giving you more grief and stress, you need to be loyal to yourself.
Yes.
And maybe you don't need those people in your life, or even unfriend them on your Facebook page.
Sure. We're talking now about toxic people,
Yes,
Walt. And,
we are.
and this is one of the reasons people commit suicide, is because they surround themselves with toxic environments. They surround themselves with toxic people. I have a number of people in my practice who are in toxic work environments, and they blow fuses, and they get anxious and end up in the hospital, end up in severe depression. And so they're in a toxic environment. Why? Because their core belief is that they need to do so much in order to be loved. And this core belief is a whipping force. It's a whipping, driving force that will whip and drive them into the earth, literally. So if they don't set the boundaries, and if they don't pull themselves out of this toxic system, then they may end up in crisis. And some people who end up in this form of crisis don't make it through.
No, they don't. That's
So when
unfortunate.
I talk about unconditional love and protecting ourselves, we need to unconditionally love ourselves and honor ourselves, because we're not going to be honored until we honor ourselves.
Right.
So
Sometimes people can't respect you if you don't respect yourself.
absolutely.
And along those lines, number 2 about avoiding holiday stress really is offering helping hands to those that are simply preparing meals or otherwise.
Yes.
I know one thing that I've done in the past, we have in town called the Union Rescue Mission, and of course over the holidays they always have music and they serve food, and I've gone down and been a server and helped out, and it's an incredible eye-opener.
Right, because when I talk about, on the mind map, I talk about the light, that we have light within us and we have darkness within us. And when we activate our light by sharing and caring about other people, and then they're able to take that in and grow with that, then that produces a physiological response. And the physiological response of that caring, that empathy, of that connection actually will create a sense of blood flowing to different areas. It's very enlivening. It's
Enlivening.
Enlivening.
Okay.
Right? It's enlivening. When we care, when we share, when we love other people, it's it brings life force. It brings the flow into our bodies, and it brings the energy through our bodies to another, and that person feels that energy and takes that energy. And now we have a different environment between two people. That environment is not a suicidal energy, is it? So
No, it's not.
So suicide prevention also includes reaching out to other people,
Yes.
because really, when you think about it, what's suicide? It's an inside. It's when you turn your attention inward and you go into your own space and your own thoughts and your own vortex of negativity, right? And when you're sharing and caring about other people, what are you doing? You're reversing that energy flow, and you're extending yourself to other human beings. And that's enlivening. That's connecting.
Well, and that brings us to our third thing to reduce holiday stress, or stress in general, and that is to share what you're grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And what I call it is an attitude of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And just having gratitude in general has so many therapeutic and just wonderful attributes.
And if anybody cares
And
to
it really
call
does increase
in,
our overall well-being.
very much so. If anybody cares to call in and just share with
Yeah.
us what you're grateful for,
Absolutely.
or share with us how you've been down and how you were able to pick yourself up and process through these dark, negative feelings that could have potentially taken you into this dark, suicidal place, please do, because whenever we do share with other human beings, we might be saving a life, which is why we're doing this show. Ultimately,
Yes, that's
why
true.
are we doing this show? We're doing this show because we know you're listening. We know that there are many of you who are not exactly in a happy place in life, and we want you to know that we love you. We're here.
And
We're
we
here
do
to
care.
listen. We're here to process through any feelings that may be stuck in you and imploding in you, because ultimately suicide is the final implosion of life, isn't it?
Yes.
If you look on my mind map, if those of you are in front of a computer and you go to Dr. Judy WTF, you will see my mind map. .com. Thank you. You'll see my mind map, and if you look at panel number 6, which is called Clash of the Isms, you want to put that up there? Thank you very much. Okay. Clash of the Isms is the ultimate implosion. So when we break down, when we go from the darkness and if we go from the darkness to the manifestation of this darkness, to the encoding of the darkness, to the breakdown of the darkness, to the defense of the darkness, to the final implosion of the darkness, which represents...
Gosh, that's awfully dark.
I know, that's so dark. Okay,
That's so dark.
So dark. Okay, so let me go through this again. When we're wounded, we react to the wound. When we react to the wound, we encode the wound, and we form what I call a negative core belief about
Right, and it becomes
ourselves.
part of us.
Right, and this negative core belief about ourselves get tripped up all the time. And if it gets tripped up one too many times, that's the bullying thing. You know, how many young people are bullied in school, and their core belief that they're ugly or stupid or not worthy or shameful or dirty gets tripped up just one too many times, and then they're found hanging from their room.
Those blemishes carry with them for their whole entire life.
Right. So we have to really, really, really be responsible for unraveling our negative core beliefs, because it's this core belief that's our Achilles heel that will trip us up every time and take us down into chaos, and then defense mechanisms which break down somewhere, somehow, and ultimately cause us to implode and explode. On previous episodes, we talk about explosions. In our last episode on the knockout game, right?
Yeah.
We talked about how people explode and bop people over the head and take each other down.
Well, there's even a follow-up story with that, just to add more credence, unfortunately, to it, is there's some gangs that some of them even have GPS stuff on their ankles. In other words, they're on probation and have to stay home.
Okay.
And the last thing they're doing is staying home, and they're out causing more chaos and more trouble.
So even that's not stopping them.
No, it's not.
No. So one way or the other, we take these negative feelings, which again start from childhood. It's the blueprint.
Yes.
And the prevention of this is to parent properly. When we are properly loved, when we have eye contact, skin contact, when we are consistently attended to, when our infant needs are met, when we have parents that truly regard us and give us the unconditional love that we need to develop our healthy psyches, that's what prevents us from forming these negative core beliefs. So when we're off to a good start in life, then we encode in a strong, healthy way, and we tend not to go down into the vortex of this dark space. When we are not attuned to, when we are not regarded, when we are discounted from the beginning, then we form negative core beliefs around a sense of worthlessness. And it's easy then to go down into this dark suicidal
And at that point, what
place.
you're really doing is you're co-signing your own BS.
That's right. That's right.
Really what you're doing is you're believing your own stuff and you're co-signing it, and get you into more trouble and more darkness than you need to.
And ultimately, who is the most dangerous person on the planet? It's you.
It's us. It's ourselves.
Right. We are the most dangerous to ourselves. Or the opposite. I know I talk about the darkness a lot, but the opposite is that we can also be our best friend. We can also be unconditionally loving to ourselves. We can also get some help and get some therapy behind these negative core
about some
beliefs and
statistics.
unravel them.
You talk about half of all suicides. Many who attempt suicide never seek professional help. They just,
Amazing.
they're in their own darkness. But on the
Amazing.
other side is 80% of the people who seek treatment for depression are treated successfly.
Yes.
So that means, 80%, that's a huge positive number.
Very much so.
And the depression is the number one disability in the world. So if you're feeling depressed, go get some help. There's 80% chance that you actually will get there. And it's interesting that us men have more issues, I think, with suicide than women. There are 4 male suicides for every 1 female suicide, but there are 3 female suicide attempts for every male attempt. So women reach out, I think, more for help, but us guys, we're more successful when we do have an attempt.
And more aggressive. I believe
Yes.
that men use firearms and women use
And
pills.
we have a call. So, hi. Thanks for calling. You're on the couch with Dr. Judy.
Hi, what's your name, please?
Hi, this is Jay in L.A.
Hi, Jay.
And
How are you? Thank you for calling in.
Well, thank you for having me. I was calling because I hear you giving strategy for the person that perhaps is suicidal. But I guess my question is to it relates to the friends and the family.
Yes.
Of a person who has made the decision to commit suicide, and I did have that happen to me.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, because I was told that one of the things that you have to do, I guess, to kind of get past the pain, is to you really do have to have some level of anger, because I was told that if someone had if it had been a homicide situation where someone took that person's life, you'd be angry at the person that
Definitely.
took that person's life. Right. So if the person takes their own life, that's as a family member or as a friend,
Yes.
you have to do the same. And I'm just wondering what your take is.
That's
on
an
that.
excellent question. May I ask who in your family committed suicide?
No, a friend.
A friend. This was
A friend.
a
It was a
friend
friend.
of yours.
Okay.
Thank you for that volume adjustment. I feel so much more present in the room. Thank you. So, Jay, I think your question is a really, really strong question, in that when somebody kills another human being, you're naturally angry. But what about when a friend takes his or her own life? Do you know that suicide is one of the most aggressive acts a human being can inflict on others? Because suicide is not just taking out oneself, is it? It's gonna definitely have a huge
Ripple
effect.
Yep, ripple effect.
So what you're talking about is an Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did a lot of work on death and dying, writes about the 5 stages of grief. And if I can recite them, then I'll have remembered my college exam question here. But okay, but definitely it's anger, denial, anger, bargaining. I believe
the 5 stages,
there's a lot of soul searching there, and then eventually it comes to acceptance. So insofar as losing a friend to suicide, again, this is a very, the suicide is a very passive, aggressive act, because it leaves the people behind them thinking, WTF, what could I have done different? Why didn't I know that you were in trouble? What if I would have called you the other day? Jay, I had a friend of mine who committed suicide about 5 years ago, just about now, maybe a month from now, and I couldn't help but think, gee, if I only called the person back sooner, what if that person and I would have been hanging out a little bit longer? What if I would have picked up that phone call when that person called? And there's this tremendous sense of responsibility. There's a kind of a survivor's guilt, right? A survivor's guilt.
Well, you're also doing what we all
like you said.
we also do what we should on ourselves. We should have done this. We should have done
That's
that.
right. That's right. And so, the ripple effect is so profound. I remember being at his funeral, and his daughter stood up to speak, and she's all of 15 years old. I mean, come on, she just lost her father, and of course I knew him very, very well. He was a wonderful man, suffering tremendously from anxiety, and he could not, with all the medication and all the therapy in the world, he just could not contain himself. And I just want to speak a little bit to the particular reason. This person was so suppressed, his mother would actually put a pillow over his mouth to stop him from expressing himself.
Oh my gosh.
So in the course of his life, he just didn't know what to do with all of this suppression, and he tried very, very many methods of suppressing the anxiety ultimately, and the only thing that really did it for him was a bullet in his head. But who he left behind was his beautiful daughter and a bunch of people who loved him. And I'm sure with your friend left behind very, very many people who were in agony over this event, and should have, could have, would have done something if they could have. And so just curious, what was your process around it when you found out?
Well, initially, I besides being very hurt, I felt partly responsible because I didn't know that, like you said, he was in such trouble.
Yes.
Not necessarily even trouble, but in such pain.
Yes.
And I had spoken to him, I guess, maybe a week before he actually made the decision, and we had gone to lunch and to a meeting, and I mean, we had interacted, and I had no idea that was, that would be the last time that I would see him. So I was really shocked. I guess I've kind of reached the acceptance phase at this point, because it's been about the same length of time as you mentioned for your friend.
I see. Okay.
And but I guess the other thing is that it was around the holidays.
Yeah,
and
it was
so,
around the holidays. Yes. Was this an incident where he took his life with a firearm?
No.
No.
About half the suicides are with firearms.
I'm not quite sure what the method was.
Yes.
But the fact that he made such a decision, and I guess I know in terms of the Friends network, we just didn't see it coming.
No.
So
did he leave a note?
Apparently, more than just a note, a long letter. So.
I see. So this is
I
just.
guess he had a lot to express.
I'm sure he had a lot to express. I really appreciate your time on the air, and I'm sure you spoke for many, many individuals out there, and I so appreciate your call in and looking.
Thank you. I appreciate you having been able to be there.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you taking the phone call.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. All the best.
All righty.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so yeah, suicide is a
Right, and
is
a lot of people, there's a lot
ripple,
of
there's a ripple effect. Yes,
right, and a lot of
course.
people don't. Which is brings us to number 4 to reduce holiday stress.
Okay.
Is take notice of your expectations. Expectations cloud our perception of others. And sometimes if we express our expectations, or maybe sometimes unfortunately lower our expectations, because then you're less likely to be disappointed. But
Yes.
and that's a big issue. The last one is, look back and reflect on some previous conflicts to see if you may maybe better understand them or the incidents with it. If you do some self analysis or reflection, to ponder that. So.
Have you had anybody in your family take such
I have
radical
not.
measure?
I have
friends?
not.
You
I
have
have not.
personally.
No, I've had a couple of nosedives myself, but no, I haven't.
Yeah.
Haven't had anybody. in my family
I
that-
think that everybody thinks about
well,
doing themselves in at one point or another. Not
yes.
necessarily seriously, but as the human race, we're suffering.
Well, there's about 8 million people right now
Okay.
that are contemplating and thinking about it in
Yes.
the United States alone.
Yeah.
I mean, we look about there's the millions and millions. It doesn't seem like a big number, relatively speaking, but it's a big number.
So I want to talk a little bit about whether to take a suicide threat seriously or not. That's a very big deal. And I like to err on the side of take it seriously. If somebody says, I want to commit suicide, take that seriously and get them to a therapist at the very least.
Get 'em help.
Get them professional help. And of course, if you think that they're out there with the plans and means. One of the things that I do in my profession is assess suicidality, and the questions that are asked are, do you have a plan? Do you have a means? And if the answer is yes to both these questions, then you want to do what I call a 51-50. Either you get them over to a hospital and they voluntarily walk themselves in, you get them to call a suicide prevention hotline, or if they just won't go, you can save a life by calling
There's two numbers
PET
here.
team.
Well, first of
Police, PET team.
two phone numbers if you're going to do about suicide.
Thank you.
One is 800 suicide. 800 SUICIDE, and of course these are 24/7, 365 days a year. And the other one is 800-273 TALK. 800-273-TALK, which is 8255.
Thank you very much for that.
Those are from the website suicide.org.
Very, very helpful. Another thing that I want to talk about is medication, and the fact that sometimes when people start using medication, they actually end up committing suicide. And why is this so? It almost seems like if you're going to be on medication, it's going to help you not off yourself. But sometimes when you're in such a low place and you start getting up out of that space and feeling a little bit better, then you actually now have the energy to get that plan in place and get the means and the plan in place and take action. So people who are coming out of a deep, dark depression
And they
are
look like-
actually sometimes in more danger.
They are, and they look
so
like they're
watch
getting better.
out for that.
Yeah, they look getting better, and they are getting
Yeah.
better, but that also means they have more strength and gumption, if you will, to follow through, and that's true.
Correct.
It happens a
Correct.
lot.
Correct. Now, and I do want to talk a little bit more about medication, because as a psychologist, I deal with patients who come in and they're medicated, or they talk to me about whether they should be on medication or not. And what I find is that sometimes life is really, really, really tough. And I'm not a big proponent of medication, because I've seen people who come in with a level 9, 10 depression, and once we start getting the truth dialogue going, and by that I mean expressing their repressions, expressing that anger turned inward. And this is really, really key, because people who are turning their anger inward and suiciding are just a keg of anger ready to explode. And who do we actually want to explode on? Well, I'll let you take a guess, Walt, because we displace a lot of anger. So who's the primary injurer of life? People don't really want to touch on this subject, but I will touch on it tonight because it's that important. It's really that important. And I've sat in my chair for so many hours and have treated so many people that ultimately what we're really denying is the expression of the hurt and the wound from our childhood years.
Our parents.
Yes. And the first wounding is the wounding from our caretakers. And the very biggest wound of all is when we are not unconditionally attended to, when we're not unconditionally loved. These feelings back up in us. They get projected, they get introjected, they get digested, and then they get manifested and encoded, and it becomes a whole big mess and breaks down in chaos and ultimately explosions and implosions.
And
So
it's very difficult to take apart.
it's very difficult to take apart. So for those of you who are thinking that this is a shame and blame your parents game, it's not that at all. This is truly an important piece of the human race where we have to clean ourselves from our multi-generational past wounds, and oftentimes when we don't, we end up taking those wounds out on ourselves and others, and it's not a pretty picture, and it's just easier therapeutically to express the pain in a contained environment, let the toxicity out so it doesn't bleed all over others and self-harm.
Just because your DNA or your blueprint at birth was kind of messed up doesn't mean it has to be that way your whole life.
And we're talking about the psychological DNA.
Yes,
by the way.
psychological DNA.
Your imprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we all know it's not how you start that matters, it's how you finish.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And because our childhood, as we say on many of our shows, childhood is a hostage situation. When we're children, we can't really say, Mommy, you hurt my feelings. So we don't even have those skills. Or Daddy, stop doing that. All we're left with is sometimes shutting up and shutting down. And just like my dear friend who got a pillow put on his mouth every time he wanted to express his feelings, he ended up imploding, and that's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon.
So please do call in. We really want to hear from you.
So just to go through, we've got about 5 minutes here before our shrink
okay.
that tune.
Okay.
But there's 8 things that they suggest in terms of dealing with stress and surviving depression over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to go through these really quick. First one is to try and schedule theater or dance performance in some evening. So in other words, go do something that you enjoy, that's fun,
And
gets you out of the house. You're not alone.
Right.
You're around other people,
Yeah.
and something you can look forward to. Second is go on a trip. Okay, get the heck out of Dodge. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Cruises or day trips. I mean, again, you're not alone. You're around folks. Third is join a community, maybe a YMCA or some kind of club. I mean, one entity that's really amazing, a lot of folks don't know about, is called Meetup. You go to meetup.com, and you can find any kind of group you could imagine, from hiking to making, stitching, sewing, anything.
And then
again, you join a small group.
The other one is Meetup, MEAT.com, where you eat steaks together. No, just kidding.
There probably is a meetup in Meetup to do that. Fifth is again, organize a hike. Maybe I suggest it's easier way to do it is just do Meetup. Maybe you want to go to a spa. I mean, heavens, there's here in town, there's on every corner, right? Or go on a hike. Yoga, and then exercise. They talk about exercise. Just put your shoes on and walk out the door.
Makes a
Just
huge difference.
Walk down, see the flowers, hear the birds singing, see the sunshine, feel it on your skin. That has an amazing impact on you. Just
let the light in. The light.
Getting the light, getting
Yeah.
out of your head, getting out of yourself is huge. 2 others, again, we've talked about helping others. And lastly is, if you want, really go join a meeting. I mean, maybe you've got issues with alcohol, go to AA or NA, Narcoanonymous or something. Again, you're around folks and around those that are having similar challenges than you are, okay? Because no person truly is an island.
That's right. So, is it time?
Almost. We've got
Really?
time a little bit more, yeah. But
Okay.
if you want to contact us, we have time. Plenty of call in if you want to call in
Really?
real quick. But if you want to write us, you can write info@drjudywtf.com. We'd be happy to respond to any and all requests, whether it be a song to shrink. We're also on Facebook and Twitter of same. And our song is actually by, it's contrary of a Christmas song.
Yeah, not quite a Christmas song.
It's by Metallica. This was one of the ones I found that
I love Metallica.
Yeah, a lot of people like Metallica.
Yeah.
The song is called "Fade to Black." So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the lyrics. Dr. Judy is going to put it through her mind map, and then we're going to play the song. And as I promised, it ain't no Christmas song. Life, it seems, will fade away, drifting further every day, getting lost within myself. Nothing matters, no one else.
So here we're hearing the isolation, life fading away, and we're at the effect of life. It's drifting away instead of us being the cause of our lives. It's just kind of like passing us by, and we're getting lost within ourselves, no one else, meaning that we're imploding now. Lost within ourselves. We're going inward as opposed to connecting to other people.
Well, also, I would imagine we're not taking ownership. We're just letting it go.
Yes.
Yeah. I have lost the will to live, simply nothing more to give. There is nothing more for me, need the end to set me free.
So here there's this sense of knowing that there's this hopelessness, and when people have nothing to give, they feel that they're useless. And when people feel useless, then what's the antidote to that is to be giving, because giving gives light. And here the person is saying, I have no more light. There's only darkness within me. So why be here? There's nothing for me. And the only way to set free is to go.
Again, a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Correct.
Things aren't what they used to be, missing one inside of me. Deathly lost, this can't be real. Cannot stand this hell I feel.
And this goes back to the hole in the soul, missing one inside of me, which to me reminds me of the lack of nurturance, the lack of mothering, the lack of a feeling that there was somebody by this person's side to really give him a backbone, a psychological backbone, and now there's a missing. It's like an emptiness.
Hole in the soul is so
Definitely.
apropos.
Yes.
Emptiness is filling me to the point of irony. Growing darkness taking dawn. I was me, but now he's gone.
So there was a person inside there once upon a time, but now there's a shell of a person, and this hole is expanding, and the loss of self is really prevalent here. There are no boundaries. There's no containing element here. So there's no kind of a remnant of somebody in that person's life to really hold them and to really nourish them.
Well,
and now
they're giving up.
They're gone, right?
Yeah, they're giving up.
The containing mother never contained, so now they're just disintegrating.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, no one but me can save myself, but it's too late. Now I can't think why I should even try. Yesterday seems as though it never existed. Death greets me warm. Now I just say goodbye.
And the cognitive, I can't think, because when we go into that deep, dark hole of depression, the cognitions go. We're no longer thinking, and the only way out now is a greeting through death. Now it's just time to say goodbye, because there's no other way, there's no other place to go. There's only emptiness and darkness.
And with that, we are going to close our show. Thanks so much for listening. We hope this has been helpful. We hope you all have a little more positive Christmas thoughts, holidays thoughts. And we're going to finish with our song by Metallica, and it's Fade to Black. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much for listening.
This has been Dr. Judy WTF, yes. And I'm your host, Walt Lusk, with Dr. Judy Rosenberg.
Thank you.
God bless.
God bless.
but now